Whether they're hosts of variety shows, game shows, or late-night talk programs, many hosts have devoted decades to their lives to brightening up our lives. The final broadcast of one of our favorite TV personalities often leaves us feeling grief, just as we would when losing a close friend, companion, or family member. Join Factsverse as we take a look at the heartbreaking goodbyes of several iconic TV show hosts that left us in tears. Dick Clark. If you've ever tuned in to watch the ball drop on New Year's Eve, you've probably seen the long-running annual TV event Dick Clark's New Year's Rockin' Eve. While the show is currently hosted by American Idol's Ryan Seacrest, for many years it was hosted by one of TV's most beloved personalities, Dick Clark. Clark hosted American Bandstand before becoming the face of New Year's Eve on ABC's yearly celebratory program in 1974. He continued hosting it until 2004, when a massive stroke forced him to take time off. 2 years later, in 2006, he returned as a co-host and continued his duties until 2011, when he hosted his final New Year's Eve on December 31st of that year. During the countdown, Clark shared a heartwarming kiss with his beloved wife before sharing a few final words of encouragement to the audience. Sadly, a few months later, he passed away. Bob Barker. Many of you have fond memories of watching Plinko, Showcase Showdown, and many other Price is Right staples when you were forced to stay home due to coming down with a cold. The Price is Right has been one of the most iconic daytime shows on TV since it debuted in 1972, and Bob Barker is the host that most people consider to be the long-running show's best. For more than 50 years, Barker reminded us daily of the importance of helping control the pet population. And while he took the opportunity to promote his animal activism, he also did an incredible job of making The Price is Right one of the most iconic games to hit the airwaves. He started his game show hosting career in 1956 as host of Truth or Consequences. In 1972, CBS offered him a job hosting The Price is Right, and for the next half-century, he held that post while becoming one of the best-known TV personalities in America. During his final goodbye in 2007, Barker thanked his audience for their decades of unwavering support before passing the torch over to Drew Carey. Before we tell you more, be sure to give this video a like and subscribe to Factsverse if you haven't already. Mr. Rogers. Fred Rogers' television career began in 1953 when he landed a job hosting a public access children's show called The Children's Corner. That show was eventually picked up by Canada's CBC network and was renamed Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood in 1968. Fred Rogers hosted the show for the entirety of its run, ending in 2001. That's when Rogers, after spending decades of his life entertaining, inspiring, and educating children, decided to finally retire. In the final episode of the show, Rogers directly addressed the audience by giving them advice on how to be a good neighbor and expressing oneself positively. Before the end of the show, he gave one last final affirmation, telling the viewers how proud he was of them. Sadly, Fred Rogers died of stomach cancer in 2003. Alex Trebek. Many longtime Jeopardy fans might be surprised to learn Alex wasn't the original host. He hosted Jeopardy from 1984 to shortly before his death in 2020. By the time he died, he had hosted more than 8,000 episodes of the beloved show and was still under contract to keep going as host until at least 2022. Unfortunately, he died of stage 4 pancreatic cancer in November of 2020. Trebek had first announced he was battling the disease in March 2019, but continued hosting while undergoing chemotherapy and radiation treatments right up until the end. Even in his final taping, he was in high spirits. In the closing moments of that final episode, Trebek told the audience he was immensely grateful for their support before a montage of his highlights on the show began to play. Walter Cronkite. Walter Cronkite was a journalist and news anchor with the CBS Evening News for the better part of 2 decades. He got his start delivering the news in 1937, and over the course of his career, he covered some of the most historical events of the 20th century, including the Second World War, the Vietnam War, the moon landing, JFK's assassination, and the Watergate scandal. He was famous for his departing catchphrase, "And that's the way it is." He would utter this phrase nightly at the close of his segment on CBS Evening News. In time, he became known as the most trusted man in America. At age 65, Cronkite was forced into retirement by a mandate CBS had at that time. On his final broadcast in 1961, Cronkite fittingly bid farewell to his audience with the words, "And that's the way it is," before signing off for the last time. Johnny Carson. Johnny Carson was 36 when Jack Paar handed over the reins as host of The Tonight Show to him in 1962. He went on to host the late-night talk show for the next 30 years before ABC aired his final farewell episode on May 22, 1992. The final episode of Carson's Tonight Show was a gentle, nostalgic, and emotional affair. It began as usual with Carson emerging from behind the curtain to sit on his stool and deliver his nightly monologue. But instead of taking witty jabs at politicians, making light of current events, and speculating about the entertainment world, Carson used this time to thank his fans for their continued support and admiration over the previous 3 decades. He thanked his production crew for their years of hard work and dedication, and took a moment to reflect on some of the most memorable moments of his tenure as host of the show. What followed was a video montage beginning with a look back at his first show in 1962. We got to see Carson in perfect form, showing off his Midwestern tongue-in-cheek charm and signature humor. After saying he would, quote, do it all over again if he could, we were treated to clips featuring some of Carson's most famous guests, including Robert Kennedy, Richard Nixon, Groucho Marx, and Judy Garland. We were also reminded of some of the most entertaining musical guests who had graced The Tonight Show's stage in years past, including Elton John, Liberace, Yo-Yo Ma, and Itzhak Perlman. After running through a list of past guests who had passed away since the show's start, including John Wayne, Charlton Heston, Natalie Wood, and Orson Welles, the credits began to roll as tears streamed down Carson's face. Before it was over, the credits froze briefly to show a beautiful sunset scene overlaid with the name of Carson's late son Rick. And with that, the era of Johnny Carson ended. Ed Sullivan. Aside from Johnny Carson, Ed Sullivan is arguably one of the most iconic television hosts of all time. His hit variety show, Toast of the Town, aired every Sunday evening before being rebranded as The Ed Sullivan Show in 1948. At that point, it shifted away from the variety format to instead become more of a talk show. The program became famous for making stars out of its guests. Perhaps most notably, the Beatles rose to the top of the charts in the U.S. after making their historic appearance on the show in 1964. Throughout the 50s and 60s, musical guests like Elvis, The Doors, and the Rolling Stones made appearances on the groundbreaking program. The Ed Sullivan Show also developed a reputation for popularizing young, up-and-coming comedians. While the show was immensely popular with audiences, in 1971, CBS canceled a handful of shows without warning, including The Ed Sullivan Show. Because of this, Ed's final episode, which aired March 28, 1971, wasn't any different than any other installment. Sullivan had not been informed his show was canceled before taping, and because of this, he wasn't able to say goodbye to the audience. Tragically, Ed died of cancer a couple years after his show was given the axe. Now it's time to hear from you. Which one of these hosts was your favorite? Let us know in the comments section below. And before you go, make sure you give this video a like and subscribe to Facts Verse if you haven't already. Click the bell icon to stay updated on all our latest content.